Wow, what a night it has been for that party, and what a day is still yet to unfold as results keep pouring in from the local elections up and down the country. Astonishing figures when you look at some of the wins and the gains by Reform. Oh no, not just toppling Conservatives, but taking over control of councils from the Labour Party, from the Liberal Democrats, winning mayoral races, winning that by-election. This is going to be a day that I think is going to go down in history. Mark my words and mark your diaries. 2525 is the start of the revolution. Yes, the legacy parties might be saying, well, this is a protest vote. Oh, well, they're just disappointed with us now, but there's 4 years to go until a general election. I'm not sure that that's going to work out for them. I really don't think so, because when you look at some of these majorities that Reform have been getting in local elections where normally turnout's pretty low, that really it's the legacy parties who often benefit from local elections, dedicated voters, branch members who will go out and vote come rain or shine. But this is looking truly historic. Runcorn and Helsby, by-election, Reform UK, win. Only by 6 votes. Only by 6 votes, but this was a Labour Party safe seat for generations. Greater Lincolnshire mayoralty, Reform UK win. Dame Andrea Jenkins, of course, formerly of the Conservative Party, swept to victory with a majority of near 40,000 votes. The West of England mayoralty, well, the Labour Party did hold that, but Reform UK's Aaron Banks in a seat, quite frankly, that would have looked impossible for Reform at one stage, came second by only a whisker, really, 6,000 votes. So many more results to get you across. We're going to be talking about, well, by-elections, local council elections, mayoral elections all day, because like I said, 2525, mark it in your diaries. I have a feeling this is the beginning of not just a once-in-a-lifetime change to UK politics, but once a century. This is possibly going to be the day that a completely new party, an entryist outfit, tops elections nationwide the first time in 100 years. It's big. I'm telling you, it is big. And there is a lot to digest. What does this mean for Reform? Have they got what it takes now? If they're going to be taking over whole councils with a load of newbies, are they going to live up to expectations? What does the Reform learning curve look like? How do the legacy parties respond? What were the issues behind this huge populist tidal wave? Are they going to be addressed in the next 4 years, or is this just going to be carried as baggage into a general election? Well, someone who might have the answer to some of those questions is Lord Robert Hayward, Conservative peer and, of course, a pollster. Lord Hayward, thank you so much for coming on the programme. I mean, wow. I mean, is this what you would have expected so far? Is it better than expected? Is it perhaps worse than expected?
It's better for Reform, there's no question about it. It's worse for both the Conservative and Labour Party. We wait for further results to see how the Lib Dems and the Greens have done. We always knew that their sort of plate locations were going to come on the Friday. So it's too dangerous to make a judgment completely, but there is no doubt that it's really good for Reform and a real problem for both the Conservatives and Labour Party.
Do you think that the legacy parties have massively underestimated Reform? Do you think that they anticipated this happening? I think they knew they were going to take a bit of a beating. I think they thought, especially the Conservatives, they were going to be losing seats to Reform. But do you think they anticipated it would happen so far on this scale?
No, I don't think they did. But equally, I'm not even sure that Reform did, because the tide has gone, as you say, already. We're waiting for lots more results today, but the tide has gone further than I think Reform expected, let alone what the other parties did. And the key thing now, as you indicated in your opening remarks, is how all the political parties respond to the results on Thursday and Friday and go forward.
Yeah, I wonder that myself, and I wonder what they have to give at this stage. I mean, giving you an example, so I've just come off air, a well-known morning programme not broadcast from these here towers, And the sort of questions I was being asked as the person who was a former advisor to Nigel Farage were the usual nonsense of, well, is it a racist party? Is there a problem with women? They don't have any policies. This is just a protest vote. I've heard this rinsed and repeated time and time again since my UKIP days, since my Brexit Party days, and I'm there thinking they still don't get it. They still don't get it. If they're not just out of touch with voters, they seem to be from a different planet. And this is where I wonder whether the Conservative Party, whether the Labour Party are going to have the answers for the big questions that voters are asking at the doorstep, primarily, it seems, about immigration, or whether they're going to double down on this failed strategy of demonising, othering people who are now backing reform because they don't feel listened to. Do you think that there's any room for manoeuvrability? Let's start with the Conservative Party here, because of course they're not in office, so they can't do what the Labour Party might be able to do, which is prove that they can deport people and cut immigration, etc. The Conservative Party aren't in a position to do that. Do you think they're going to be able to make loud enough and clear enough promises that they'll be able to turn voters back to them?
Turning the Conservative Party round was not something that was going to happen in a matter of months. There's no question that on July the 4th last year, the population said one thing: we don't want the Conservatives any longer. They didn't say any more than that. But the Conservatives are turning round a supertanker. They will have to develop more policies. There's no question about that. They started doing so. But any party that says we're not going to change, we're just going to hope that reform collapses, is kidding themselves. They have to take a real look at what's happening, and the government does as well. And I disagree with you solely in the assessment that it's immigration solely related. There are all sorts of other issues which the general voters are concerned about. But it is for all the parties now to address the impact of the results. And if I can just take myself back a very long time, and that is to a Robert Redford film called The Candidate, who fights an election and then wins in a really shock result. And the concluding shot of the whole film is, what now? What do I do next? And that is something that Nigel Farage and Reform are going to have to address, because it's one thing to win an election in the same way that the Conservatives and Labour have been losing elections overnight. But once you've got that power, that decision-making, that influence, then you have to show that you can actually deliver with it.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a huge test for hundreds of councillors, newly elected councillors for reform, especially up and down the country, people who may not have been in the political world before, people who may not have been councillors, who are now going to be facing quite a steep learning curve. But actually, perhaps it's going to be refreshing. We will find out. Let's bring in a caller and speak to Georgina in London. Hi there, Georgina.
Hello, Alex.
Hello, my darling.
Good morning. Well, we were there yesterday in Runcorn. The excitement of the people who came to see Nigel and the party, the excitement that, they were going to vote, and they knew what they were voting for. They were sick and tired of Labour and the Conservatives and being told the same thing over and over, that they were going to do this, they were going to do that, and nothing has been done. They have seen nothing being done. With Nigel Farage and the Reform UK party, they are saying they are going to get things done. The amount of elderly people I spoke to who are absolutely brought to the knees by the fact that their winter heating allowance had been taken after they've been told it wasn't, the fact that people can't get homes and migrants are up the road from them being given everything they want, a bed, board, lodging, spending money. People are sick and tired, and these were the things we heard over and over again. Some people were just like, well, we are voting for reform because we will not vote for Labour or Conservative again.
I want to go back to you, Lord Hayward, because Georgina makes an important point, I think, that I wanted to discuss with you, which is talking about people not wanting to vote Labour or the Conservatives again. And so far, the media has focused entirely on the Conservative Party, how this affects them, will there be a deal at the next election, and ignored the fact, actually, that reform poses a very real threat to the Labour Party, especially in those red wall seats, the seats that would have voted Brexit back in 2016. Now, I know from my times at UKIP that UKIP took a third of their votes from the Tories, a third from the Labour Party, and a third who hadn't voted before. Do you think the Labour Party have now got the message that they better watch their backs?
I think they started getting the message sometime around November, December, but they haven't got the full message as yet. The defeat in Runcorn should give them a further step change, but I have been struck watching different spokesmen and women from different political parties this morning, how leaders of the Labour Party are saying, well, you'll just wait, it'll all come good on the night. Well, clearly the voters don't believe that, and therefore Labour are going to have to get the message, and they face a real problem, because the probability is that although they're losing to reform in some parts of the country, I have a feeling that come the results this afternoon, that Labour will also be losing to the Lib Dems and to the Greens. So Rachel Reeves will be being pulled in all sorts of different directions when it comes to the MPs coming back and sitting on the government benches and having Labour Party meetings, because people will describe why they've suffered a defeat from very different angles, and the pressures within the Labour Party, they're not going to fall apart as a government, but the pressures within the party will be substantial.
Do you think, actually, one thing that has been helping Reform UK, because one thing I've noticed is more often than not, if the BBC wants someone to give a point of view from that sort of angle, they come to me because they know I was a Brexit Party MEP and at one point I was advisor to Reform. And I noticed when I turn on the television, I was invited onto Good Morning Britain today, where they have their normal weekly panel of a former Conservative advisor, a former Labour minister. And more often than not, Reform still isn't invited on to the shows. It's still not being spoken about and cross-examined on the news. And it strikes me actually that this is quite helpful for the party. Rather than it be negative, it reminds me rather of everyone adored Theresa May until she actually went out as a candidate and had to answer questions, and perhaps Reform have been given a bit of an easy ride.
Yes, I think political parties in the whole of Western democracies are only slowly learning how to deal with what is essentially a populist party. It's come to Britain slower than it has in other parts of Western Europe, but it's now clearly arrived as of today. But one of the reasons that Donald Trump won so clearly in the United States last year was because the Democrats didn't know how to react to the Republican Party in its current form. And that's a real problem, not just for the broadcasters, but for the political opposition. They have got to learn how to respond. And that's why I said just now that the Conservatives and the Labour Party have to look and decide what they're going to change, what they're going to keep, and how they're going to project themselves in the future over the next few months and the next few years, because it is a real problem for them.
How much do you think that these results today are going to be a massive fillip to Reform in terms of, once upon a time, something that would hold back voters from backing an insurgent party like Reform or Brexit Party as it was, or UKIP before that? Is this idea that a vote for them would be a wasted vote, that they can't actually win? So when they get to the ballot box, they think, well, you know, I would have voted for the Nigel Farage party, but actually, what's the point? Because I'm not going to get it. I may as well back Labour. I may as well back the Conservatives. But actually, if there's one big take-home narrative from today, it's Reform cannot just win, but can come top. Do you think that's now going to be reflected in a boost in polling overall?
I'm not absolutely sure that there was that much of a barrier for Reform, because Nigel Farage has that style of conveying the message all before him. The real risk for Reform at this point is, after they've celebrated what are very substantial victories across the whole country in one level or another, is that they do have to face the issue of administration. And that is a very, very different issue from winning an election. And that's where I would disagree with, I think it was Georgina, your caller, when she said people knew what Reform wanted to do. They don't know what Reform intends to do with the education in Lincolnshire or Staffordshire or Nottinghamshire. They don't know what is going to be done in relation to the health service and the social care issues and all these sorts of things. And this is where suddenly, and as you said, very, very quickly, Reform up and down the country as either sole administrators in a council or shared administrators are going to have to address the issues of day-to-day running local authorities. And that's one really big challenge.
Well, Georgina's still on the line, thankfully, because I was going to ask her exactly that question myself. Georgina, listening to what Lord Hayward says, there is truth in this. Like I said earlier on the show, there will be hundreds of people elected as councillors for the very first time. Without doubt, the first time Reform of controlled councils. Does that worry you?
Well, I've been listening to Lord Robert Hayward, and I was at the Reform rally in Birmingham, and Nigel Farage made his policies very, very clear of what he was going to do, including NHS and education, because the NHS and the educational system is on its knees, and it's easy for Lord Hayward to say that we don't know what we stand for, but when you are told from the horse's mouth that more money is going to be put into the educational system, more money is going to be put into the NHS, it needs to be brought up to scratch. The Conservatives did an absolutely terrible job when they were in office. That is why they are not now the party that is going to be sitting against the Labour Party.
Going back, finally, final remarks from you, Lord Hayward, which is how much does efficacy and good performance at local level impact the national polling? Is it something that people look at and think, well, actually, I've got a Labour-led council in my area, I've got a Reform-led council in the future in my area, and actually my public services still aren't up to scratch? Or is it still more the mood music, the vibes that are the more important at national level?
Sadly, for local politicians, some of whom have been very, very effective in their roles, people vote on national issues even at local elections. And therefore, Reform successes are a national success. They're not a local success. And I am just going to disagree with Georgina completely. I'm not speaking as a Conservative. I've listened to Reform in relation to their policies or their supposed policies, and I'm still utterly confused. And if I'm confused, then it's fair to say that a lot of ordinary voters are confused as well.
Lord Hayward, thank you ever so much. Thank you as well for your call, Georgina. I mean, let's level this out. I wouldn't be able to tell you what the Conservative Party's policies are, and the Labour Party told us one lot of policies before the election and are now doing totally different things. So, you know, politics in the 21st century. Like I said, though, bit of a revolutionary day, it seems like to me. What do you reckon? I want to hear from you. Are you popping the corks out of the champagne today, giving yourself a Friday off work to celebrate, or are you rather concerned and shaken by what looks like a big Reform-sized earthquake happening in British politics? Let me know. The number to call 0344499 1000, charged at your normal network rate. You can use that number to send me a WhatsApp message as well, or leave me a voice note. Perhaps sing me a song of joy, or perhaps a song of commiseration. If you are a councillor who has lost your seat, how does that feel?